Welkom terug bij Emerce eDay 2015 vanuit de Kromhouthal in Amsterdam. We zijn hier de hele dag met meerdere gasten die hier rondlopen, die hier presenteren. Of die hier via de sponsor aan tafel zitten. eWeek is niet alleen een Nederlands feestje, we hebben ook internationale gasten. Waaronder mijn volgende gast. So, what is your name and what do you do?
So my name is Ben Kremer. I'm a journalism technologist. Most of the work that I do is with drones and sensor platforms. And right now I am an Open Lab fellow, the beta fellow as I'm known, at BuzzFeed's new Open Lab in San Francisco.
That's a lot of information for a person that has never heard about this. So what is the journalism part? What is the technology part?
Right. So basically, my background is in journalism. I simply put, I like storytelling. And I like storytelling using technology, using different technologies as tools, essentially. So most of the time, I'm working with journalists or working with other individuals who are sort of the true journalist or the reporter, but I'm the person sort of with the technology, with the tool, who knows how to use it. And so I contribute to the story that way.
So you said a true journalist. Is there a difference between a technology journalist and a true journalist, or what? How would you describe a true journalist?
A true journalist would be, I'm like a cameraman. So yeah, I mean, I'm a true journalist, but I don't just do work in journalism either. So I've done work with archaeologists, for example. I guess filmmaking, which is a form of journalism, but do a lot of work as well with art and sort of new media art too. Some of which sort of straddles storytelling in that I'm using sensors that I could use to do a journalism piece, but given the application, it's sound. I'm working more with sound, and I'm more interested in sort of using sensors to produce sound. So broadly speaking, working in media as well.
No, it's a bit of a definition thing, and that's why I was asking, because these days sometimes bloggers consider themselves journalists, and some journalists don't consider bloggers journalists. So there's a lot of debate in journalism and media about certain job titles and everything. But you consider yourself a journalist. That is the most important thing. So, and then you're a journalist who is attracted or is very much into technology. So
yes, and specifically emerging technologies. So I'm interested in taking technologies like drones and seeing, asking, how can we use this in different ways? So not just flying around to produce beautiful photographs and videos, but how else can we use a drone to tell a story? So my interest really is in exploring tools that are available. I'm not building drones. There are plenty of drones available, but I'm asking, how can we use these? Where can we use these? And using other technologies as well.
Right. So, and if you start off with a story, do you come up with a story and think of technology that you could use with that, or see technology and think of a story, and then you try to publish it somewhere or find partners, or how does it work?
So, I mean, it's worked both ways. So, for example, one story that I have yet to begin working on very deeply, but it's a very broad story. So in India, for example, air pollution is a major problem. There's not a lot of awareness, there's not a lot of attention that gets placed on this issue. So one project that I'm interested in working on is raising awareness by developing these open source air pollution sensors that are sort of built into and onto motorcycle helmets. So the idea is we take this sensor that gathers valuable data related to health, and we give it to people so they can use it, but give it to them in a way that it's sort of integrated into their daily routine, so they don't really have to do much extra to gather this data. And so the stories for that would be, there are journalism stories that could come out of it. Anywhere from stories about the people who are using the sensors, the results of the data, what parts of, say, Delhi have the worst air, what parts have the best air. So there are many journalism stories that come out of that. But then there's also more sort of activism elements to the story as well. So, it could be, the data could be used by organizations that are interested in addressing the issue. It could be used by journalists. So there's an example. Other times people have come to me saying, I really like the work you're doing with drones. Have you thought of doing this with us? Or doing a project like this with us? And I say, well, yeah, why not? I'm kind of the guy with the tool. So sometimes I come up with how I want to apply it. Other times people come to me and say, hey, have you thought of this? Let's do it.
But like, for instance, the example you give in India, you're not telling the story yourself. You're building a platform for others, more or less, and maybe yourself as well. But you're building a platform that others can use to tell the story.
Exactly.
But the platform isn't there, and you're a bit of an activist as well, so you see that there is an issue, and you want to make it transparent by using technology and create building blocks for stories.
Yes.
All right.
Exactly.
So, you were always fascinated by technology as well? I mean, you were, as a kid,
yes
already tinkering?
No. I mean, the tinkering has always been there. When I was small, 4 or 5, my dad gave me a toolbox full of tools, including a real saw, so that I could hurt myself, right? But so I was building toys for myself, and really, I enjoyed the building of the toy better than the toy in the end. So I've always really liked making things with my hands, with wood, later on with metal, welding, building small motorcycles. And then in college, as a journalism student, I got into electronics and building open source sensors, working with Arduinos, which is an open source microcontroller, like a tiny computer basically. So building sensors that sort of act as an extension of my own senses, which is really all the projects that I do they tie into this idea that my human body has limitations. I can't fly. I can't, there's a lot of things I can't sense, but I'm really curious about the world, and so I use technology to extend my senses, and that's how I do storytelling.
How far do you want to go with that? We had there was a biohacker on stage who has chips implanted and everything.
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know how far I'm going to go with this.
How far have you gone so far?
How far have I gone? My most recent sensor project is I took an old flashlight and I put electronics inside of it that let you listen to Wi-Fi frequencies, mobile device frequencies like 4G, LTE, 3G, the transmission frequencies of phone calls from mobile devices, SMS messages, Bluetooth. So this is energy frequencies that are going on around us constantly because of technology that we use that's in our pockets. And there's all this communication going on between these electronic devices, but we're not sensitive to it. We cannot sense them. So with my flashlight, I can plug headphones into it, and I can listen to all this activity, all this energy that's going on around us. So that's an example. And that was more of that was a sound art project, actually. Mm-hmm. But again, that's an example of extending what I can sense using technology.
Yeah, but still, it's using other devices and your own body to listen to it.
Exactly.
You still use your own ears, but you have not implanted some sort of a.
So doing. I honestly haven't thought about sort of the bio realm of this type of work, but.
Would that be some sort of an extension of your work as well? I mean, there's a lot of talks about DNA programming and everything. There's a lot of things of a lot of new developments in new technology.
Yeah.
Would you consider that part of your job?
I would, yeah. That's a realm that, I honestly hadn't even thought about it before. But yeah, you're right. That's something to think about.
Is there any particular technology that you're starting to monitor now, or just the last?
Yeah, I'm really interested in immersive visual experiences. So some of the work I've already done is using drones, but recreating real spaces. So using drones to take photographs and then turning those photographs into a three-dimensional environment. And I've done a couple projects where that's been my focus, is developing this 3D environment. Because I've always been interested as a journalist in being able to take people places. Specifically, doing international stories, being able to take people to a place where they will likely never be able to go for any number of reasons. And so using drones to recreate spaces in 3D is one form of technology that I'm really interested in. Because I think for me, that's what's special about journalism, is being able to travel through somebody else's, the content that somebody else produces. Similar to that, working with 360-degree immersive video, which gets more into the realm of virtual reality headsets, but also it's very, you can use 360 videos, you can watch 360 videos on mobile devices. Very few people today have VR headsets, but a lot of people have smartphones and tablets. And so we can consume this immersive media, and we can pull up a video on YouTube, and we can move our device around, and we can explore a space. You know, it's a step closer to actually being there. So those kinds of visual experiences are really fascinating for me, and I really want to continue to sort of refine, you know, what I'm doing with them, and also make them more accessible to people, which is what I've got on my drone here. Is a lot of times to shoot 360-degree video, people use 6 or more GoPro cameras, which that's 3,000 euros in cameras. And it weighs a fair amount too. So I wanted to create a 360-degree camera system that was light enough for a small drone, and that was also less expensive. And so for 900 euro, I came up with a 2 GoPro system of being able to capture this kind of content. So right now, that's what I'm interested in.
So, and this is going to be on Kickstarter pretty soon, or?
This is open source. See, okay. I'm working with BuzzFeed in the Open Lab, the Open Lab for Journalism, Technology, and the Arts. It's a fellowship program where everything that the fellows do is open source. It's for everybody to use, whether you're in media or not. And so, what I like about this project is that, you know, I want anybody to be able to use it. I'm not interested, believe it or not, in trying to develop a product that could make a lot of money. I'm interested in the ideas. I like working with ideas and coming up with new ideas. So that's my aim.
Right. So how did you end up in this open BuzzFeed? It's the official title again?
So it's the BuzzFeed Open Lab for Journalism, Technology, and the Arts. And it's a year-long fellowship. I'm the first fellow that they actually invited me to come on and to be the first fellow. There are, I think, 4 other fellows in addition to myself. We're all based in San Francisco. And as the name suggests, it's designed to bring in people who work at that intersection of journalism, technology, and art. So there's an individual who is a sort of activist artist developing. He does projected works. There's another fellow whose focus is on VR. There's another fellow focusing on it's something to do with campaign finances and sort of combining the concept of fantasy football, fantasy online sports, to campaign finance. So a creative way of examining campaign finance in the U.S. But basically what we're all doing is coming up with tools for telling stories. And so Jonah Peretti, the CEO of BuzzFeed, and Ben Smith, the editor-in-chief, they came across the work I had been doing with drones, and so that's how I sort of fell in with this.
So and it's a year long, and what is the aim? What is the result that you have to provide in 1 year? Or is it just 1 year
tools.
Tinkering and?
It is a tool or multiple tools. So, for example, the camera system that I've got on the bottom of this drone is a very concrete idea or a very concrete example of a tool. It's something that people can use in the process of storytelling. So for other people, it's software-based. Other people, it's hardware or a mix of both. And so for me, it's a lot of coming up with with a device that does something.
So why is this important, this lab? Why did they start this? Is there...
Well, I think for one, because there is the future of journalism. There's a lot of talk. I mean, conferences like this, like what direction is journalism heading? What will the future of journalism look like? I think they believe, as do I, that the future of journalism will involve new kinds of tools and new kinds of technology that can be used in the process of storytelling. So the value is, in media, there's not always a lot of money. I think there's not a lot of money available to create R&D labs for people to sit down and think of cool ideas. Basically, BuzzFeed can do this, and they can, they have a very strong drive to explore and to try ideas out. We've been told from day one in the fellowship that failure is just fine. Feel free to fail, but as long as you're trying ideas out, I mean, that's the most important thing. It's just to experiment, prototype, see what works, see what doesn't.
But they started this because they think it's important, or is there any other agenda?
I can't any other agenda.
Is it just because they like it, or is there another reason why they started it? Are they thinking of, do they have a strategy to create new journalists that can create new content?
No, I mean, it comes down to creating new tools that other journalists can use. Tools that are accessible to other reporters, other people in media. I mean, that is the aim. So, which is why everything is open source.
Yeah. You already mentioned that there's a lot of talk about the future of journalism, and there's not much budget to experiment and everything. Right. There's also a lot of talk about income. How do we provide money? How do we pay for stories that are made by journalists? Do you have an idea on how that should develop, or is it something that you're not concerned about?
Well, I'm kind of... I don't really have a good answer for that. I mean, given the work that I do, I had been working freelance. I had been working on grant-funded projects. Before BuzzFeed, I mean, I can't really think of any other media organizations right now that have either a division or an R&D lab that would sort of fit the kind of exploratory work that I'm doing. I think I think eventually there will be more space, but I think it's, again, I had, before BuzzFeed, before this fellowship, I'd been kind of piecing things together project by project and making it work, but not really knowing where I would be in a year, what the outcome of this work would be. And even now, I still don't really know. We'll see.
So do you see other media outlets and working with new technology or anything? Do you see? Yeah.
I think it's beginning to happen with drones, and my hope is that with these other technologies too, these other forms of storytelling, like 3D reconstructions, 360 videos. I mean, you already begin to see that. Al Jazeera did a great piece. I thought it was great, where one of their reporters went on Hajj with a 360-degree video camera, and she took you through these spaces where I could never go. And so she exposed me to this, this place where, of course, I'd heard about it, and I'd seen photos, and I'd seen, two-dimensional video. But to see this 360 piece, I just watched it on YouTube. To see it, it's really captivating, and I think that there's going to be more stories told like this, where it's not just, look at this new technology that we have, but where the device will actually be put to good use, and the focus won't be on the tool, but on the story that's being told. And I think there's more and more of that. The BBC is a good example of drones, how drones are being used in broadcasting, and they're not, it's, if you watch, episodes of Top Gear, it's very obvious when they're using drones, but they're not sort of boasting about it. It's just another tool, and I think these tools are being integrated slowly into different media organizations.
You're not afraid that they're being used as a gimmick and they have a lifespan of 1 or 2 years and everybody has seen the drone footage? And then
I have wondered that. I am kind of concerned that could be a possibility because, you know, I don't think that this is. I'm not drone obsessed. I'm open to the realization and the possibility that it is a fad, but I don't think it is, simply because it's such a dynamic tool with so many applications across different industries, not just media, that it's kind of like a flying computer. I mean, it is literally a flying computer, but also it's like a computer in the sense that it's what you do with the drone. That's what makes it important. That's where the value comes from. By itself, it's like a drone on a table is like a computer on a table, but what you do with it, that's where things get interesting. And I think that there's so much that can be done with it that it's not going away. I think drone videos, you know, I think that will kind of die down a bit, but I think that drones as a storytelling tool are here to stay. As for how often they get used, I don't know.
No, but earlier you said something interesting about this. Where you could shift to focus more on the story and not on the technology. And maybe we are focusing on the technology now, and we should shift towards the story and make that the most important thing, and look for the technology that you can use best to tell that story. But the lab is not about the stories, more or less. It's more about making tools. So how do you get there? How do you create new journalists that think about the story and have enough knowledge of these tools to use them to create new and other stories?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, there has to be a period of time where the tool is part of the focus, I think. I know with drones, even myself, a question that came up on a number of fieldwork projects that I did was, should we be able to listen to the sound of the drone in the recording? I did a project with CCTV Africa out of Nairobi, and we did a story about wildlife conservation in Tanzania, and I shot aerial video. And we had a little debate about this. Should the broadcast piece, basically I was a drone cameraman. There was a cameraman on the ground working with a camera on a tripod, and then there was me working with the drone. And we went back and forth. Should the drone sound be part of the production in the end? And I think at the time, it was included. The producers decided to include it. I think now we wouldn't do that. I think there is, I mean, part of, you want people to be interested in your story, and I think to a degree, for a while, and even now, you can still kind of leverage the fact that you're using a drone. And in some cases, I think it does help tell the story in the sense that if you didn't have the drone, you could not have done this. So I think it deserves some element of recognition, I suppose. But I think as time goes on, that'll become less and less necessary. So with all these other technologies, I think there should be some focus on it, just so people are aware of what's going on. If anything, so that other journalists know what you can do. I mean, I like coming to conferences like this and sharing ideas on how these tools can be applied so that other people can use them. And part of that is saying, here's a story we did with this tool, now here's the tool, right? So that's just part of getting it out there, and I think that's fine.
Okay. You also mentioned a little bit about things like security and things like that. I mean, legislation. Is that a big problem for you?
Yeah, so it's a problem because I choose to respect the regulations. There's a lot of drone operators who don't. In the US, the current regulations basically say that if you're going to do commercial work, you have to have, it's called a 333 exemption. Or you could also get a certificate of authorization, which is more for doing research. But if, as a journalist, if I was to go and do a story with the drone, I would need to have this this 333 exemption. In order to get that, I need to get a pilot's license. I need to know how to fly a manned aircraft. And of course, in the process of getting a pilot's license, I would never once touch a drone. You know, I would never once touch this. But this little white drone, I need a pilot's license to operate. So because of that, I've been working abroad in countries that either do not have any, that simply do not recognize drones, that also I'm operating in a completely gray legal space, or I'm working in countries where they are recognized, but because of their regulations, you can do commercial work with equipment that weighs under a certain number of kilograms, whatever. So a year ago, or in the past year, a number of countries in Africa, Kenya, for example, where I had been working, they've banned drones completely. It had been a completely legal gray area. Now there's a ban. Same with India. I'd been working in India. India banned all drones back in almost exactly 1 year ago.
So basically, everywhere where you go, they ban drones.
So with the exception of, well, yes and no. Turkey, I've been going every summer. I go to work with a team of archaeologists. No issue there. But we have official government permission, so it's all cleared what I'm doing. I was just in Africa back 5 months ago doing a Pan-African project. I went to 5 different countries, and I had paperwork, film. I was a filmmaker there. I had paperwork with stamp permissions saying, you know, I'll be using the system, this is what I'm going to be doing with it. So I had permissions to proceed with it. I think that's the direction it's moving, where you would be able to show up and operate, and it may or may not be legal. But I think there are ways to go about it that are legal and part of the bureaucratic process. So it'll require more paperwork and planning in the front end, but yeah, it's not impossible by any stretch right now to do work.
So just to finish off, do you have one thing that you could share with us for a new or existing journalist and how they should adopt technology and tools? What is your takeaway for them?
Yeah, I would say at the core of journalism, you know, it's regardless of what you're doing with new tools, you know, at least for, like, I think of people younger than me, so, you know, journalists at journalism schools. The core skills are still part of the foundation of all this work. So understanding, working with, you know, visual communication, written, knowing how to write, and then also understanding sound. So really, sound, video, writing, you know, all the tools that have been in existence for, you know, a long time, those are still just as important as ever. And really what we're doing is building on those skills and the stories that are told using these new technologies. Because these are not replacing people. Drones are not replacing, well, in some places they could replace people, but for the most part, it's just building on what we've been doing all along. And I think that's where the strength is sort of doing things that those traditional skills and the traditional forms of content could not do. But again, you know, all the projects I do involve a written piece, or have involved some element of video, whether it's 360 degrees or just video from the camera. And then, of course, sound, too. So everything is still as important as it ever was.
So polymedia, as you...
Polymedia, yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Voor wie live meekeek, we zenden de hele dag live uit vanuit de Kromhouthal in Amsterdam tijdens Emerce eDay. En voor wie later terugkijkt via ons YouTube-kanaal, daar kun je alle eerdere producties ook vinden. Net als alle andere uitzendingen van Top Names van Fast Moving Targets. Dag. Well, thank you.